Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Talent Match Arts and Culture Industry Chat. I would like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples on whose lands we are each on today. While we meet today on a virtual platform, I wish to acknowledge the importance of the land which we call home. Our speakers are in various parts of the country. I am currently speaking to you in North Delta on the traditional territory of the Tsawwassen First Nation, Musqueam First Nation, and other Coast Salish peoples. I invite you to introduce yourself and acknowledge the land that you are on in the chat. My name is Alana Hibbert, and I am the career coach for the Talent Match program and will be facilitating the chat this afternoon. Just so you know, we are recording this session and we'll be sharing it on our Talent Match student page. So if you don't want to be seen, you can keep your cameras off, but you're also welcome to keep your cameras on. It's nice to see your faces and it helps makes things more interactive. If you have questions throughout the session, please feel free to add them to the chat. I'll try to keep an eye on them as best as I can as we go along. And at the end of the session, we can open it up for a more general Q&A at the end. So, Talent Match is a collaboration between the BC Museums Association, the BC Alliance for Arts and Culture, Go2HR, which is the BC Tourism and Hospitality Industries Human Resources Association, as well as ACE-WIL, the Association for Cooperative Education and Work Integrated Learning BC Yukon. The program is funded by the Ministry of Advanced Education and Skills Training. For those who may not know, MATCH stands for Museums, Arts, Tourism, Culture, and Hospitality. Talent Match was developed with the goal of supporting work-integrated learning opportunities for both students and employers in the match sector. And we recently expanded to include the newly launched Talent for Nonprofits to support WIL more broadly across the nonprofit sector. There's, of course, a lot of overlap when we're talking about the arts and culture and nonprofits. So if there's something that interests you, you can find more information on our webpage. Also, Miranda Maslany is on this Zoom today. She is our nonprofit career coordinator, and she has more information. Our webpage also has links for you to access other career resources. It also has my contact information if you'd like to set up a one-on-one coaching session. I'm available to chat with students if you require or would prefer a more personalized manner. When I joined this project at the end of November, I was asked to examine what sort of supports were needed by students who were interested in pursuing work-integrated learning opportunities in the match sector. And in my discussions with several students, as well as WIL coordinators from schools across the province, about how this pertained to the arts and culture sector specifically, two things really became clear. First is that students from arts programs who had specific goals of working specifically in the arts and culture sector wanted a better idea of some of the prospects that were available in the industry and just more examples about what potential career paths might look like. Second, students in programs that were not specifically arts related wanted to know more about the wide array of roles and skill sets that are currently in demand at a lot of arts organizations. And I think that these conversations with students and with WIL coordinators can be mapped in some really interesting ways onto some of the broader conversations that are currently happening inside a lot of arts and culture organizations. Particularly with how a lot of these organizations have had to adapt and respond to the ongoing effects of this pandemic. And as I'm sure we're all aware, arts organizations have been some of the hardest hit and most impacted by COVID-19. And in research into the resilience of arts organizations and their ability to rebound and respond during these challenging times, a few different things have been revealed in terms of what has been vital to their resilience and for them to be able to survive and to thrive during this time. So they've cited the need for things like increased digital and technological innovation, flexibility and adaptability of their workforce and across their organizations. They talk about the need to invest in short-term innovation to create more sustainable organizations over the long term. There's also been a lot of discussion about how to create more equity and more equitable solutions and more equitable practices in these organizations and the need to bolster equity. Also, redefining the arts and heritage and what we mean when we're talking about the arts and culture and heritage and what's encompassed by these things and what we're talking about when we think of them as a sector. And students happen to be really, really well equipped to do a lot of these things and to engage in a lot of these conversations. Whether it's bringing students in on short-term projects or hiring students for extra organizational support to help with the day-to-day needs of organizations. Students bring often needed technological skills, but also really fresh perspectives and new ideas to a lot of these organizations. So really this is the context for today's session. It's an opportunity to get a sense of just some of the different WIL experiences that students have had and to just hear more about their stories working in different arts and culture organizations. Also, full disclosure, this conversation is of particular interest to me personally because I come to Talent Match having worked quite extensively in the arts myself. I started off as a communication major and then I worked in theater for 15 years before I transitioned into adult education and learning. And one of my favorite things to do is to chat with other people, and students especially, about what they've done, where they are now, where they're going, and how they're planning to get there. And lucky for us, we have a really great panel of 4 incredibly generous students who are joining us today to do just that. So I'd like to introduce you to them all. So today we have Deanna Chang, who graduated from UBC in 2017. She completed placements with the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra and the Vancouver Fringe Festival. Welcome, Deanna. We have Caitlin Gallup, who graduated with a BFA in 2008 and is currently a work-study student for UVic Continuing Studies. She is presently working with the UVic Legacy Art Galleries. Shannon Lake, who is in the second year of her Cultural Resource Management Diploma at UVic and is presently working with the UVic Legacy Art Galleries. And finally, we have joining us Danelle Sheely, who is working towards her Arts and Entertainment Management Diploma at Capilano University. She's presently doing a work placement with the Arts Club Theatre Company. Thank you all for joining us and welcome. So I think it might be useful to first get a sense, just a little bit more of your work placement. If you'd each take a few minutes to speak a little bit more specifically about your position. What is the role that you were hired to do, and what were some of the responsibilities of the position? And maybe Deanna, we could start with you because you've had a couple different co-op placements. So take it away.
Sure. So I had 2 co-op placements. My first was at the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra, and I was their special projects assistant. So I managed with an officer their lottery campaign. So that was all of the lottery tickets at the concerts with the volunteers. And that helped me secure my second co-op placement at the Vancouver Fringe Festival, where I was their communications coordinator, managing their social media and their newsletters and all of that stuff. So those were the 2 co-op placements that I was lucky enough to secure in the 2 years that I was in the co-op program at UBC.
Great. Do you find a lot of overlap between the 2 of those placements at all in terms of some of the things that you were doing, or were they quite different in nature?
It's really interesting because the position themselves, completely different fields. One was in marketing. I'd say the other is more event special projects based, but because they're both arts organizations, that overlaps pretty similar. So getting to work in the arts in, I guess it would be performing arts. That was a really cool thing that I could do. So the industry, very similar, but I was able to learn some cool different skills doing different things.
Great, thanks. Maybe next we'll go to Shannon. If you could tell us a little bit more about your work with the Legacy Galleries.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm in my third co-op semester and my second back-to-back with Legacy. Um, Both my terms at Legacy, I have been a visitor engagement and programming assistant. So what that means is I work closely with the curator of engagement as well as the curator of Indigenous arts and engagement to put on our in-person and online programs. So we've started going back to doing in-person programming, which is really exciting after 2 years of having everything online. So that has been a lot of work getting ready to shift back to in-person events. I've also been working on resources for educators. That's another big part of my job. Coming up with activities for students when they come into the gallery, and coming up with teachers' guides and lesson plans for educators so that they can use the exhibitions in the gallery in their own classroom as well.
Great, thank you. Danelle, can you tell us a little bit about your work with the Arts Club?
Yeah, definitely. My role is the fund development assistant. So I'm working in the development department, meaning it's the department that acquires funding through public and private sectors. So whether it be corporate sponsors, the government, individual giving, and foundations, just helping out with projects and assisting with everything that goes on in here. I also work on some stuff with HR, so I help them with coordinating schedules. And then I'm also doing once a week with the artistic team, which is really fun. So getting to see behind the scenes of some of the shows and the audition process and stuff like that. So a little bit of everything.
Great, thanks. And Caitlin.
Hi, yeah. So I got a work study position with the UVic Legacy Art Galleries. It actually came about because I wanted to volunteer there and just to get some experience with art collections and within an art institution. And the curator of collections actually suggested I apply for the work study program. And I didn't know I was eligible or anything, but because I was taking 3 classes at UVic continuing studies, that it meant I was eligible for a certain amount of hours. And so that meant I could actually get paid to volunteer there, basically, which was really nice. And I was part of the visitor engagement team, where we would welcome people to the gallery and to the exhibit, show people around. And I would also work behind the scenes, doing condition reporting and working with the collection more. And that I really liked. Yeah, it gave me a lot of really good experience.
Oh, great. Caitlin, you mentioned that it seemed like you sort of fell into your WIL program a little bit, like it was sort of like you discovered that it was an option. And I'm curious with the rest of you, when you went into your academic program, was WIL, was CoOp, was that a draw for you? Was it something you knew you were going to do going in, or is that something that sort of came about after the fact?
Sorry, there's this little dog here all of a sudden. Bad timing. Bad timing. Okay. Anyway, sorry, I didn't really hear the question too much. It was about, yeah.
No, that's okay.
I fell into the position quite naturally. Yeah, so it wasn't actually a co-op position. It's work study, and which I guess is a government-funded position for students to work on campus. And because the gallery is run by the university, that was it's
Right.
an eligible position. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But
And
if I didn't answer it, let me
no,
know.
that's okay. Actually, thank you for clarifying that. And my question really was to the rest of the group as well, as to how whether like how what was their route to will, and whether they knew as they were embarking on their academic programs that they were going to also participate in co-op or will. Any of you can jump
Yeah,
in.
I can speak to that. For me, it's not a requirement of my program, but it's something that I knew I wanted to do when I was going back to school.
Mm-hmm.
The Cultural Resource Management Diploma program is my third university credential that I'm taking.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew from experience that when I finished my undergrad and when I finished my second diploma, my first diploma, that I had a hard time entering the workforce. I had all of this great experience, and in particular with the communications diploma that I did afterwards, which was really hands-on.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't really know how to apply or even advertise those skills. So I was having a hard time finding employment that really interests me. And there is a really specific way about how those skills are applied in the arts as well. So when I applied for this program, the Cultural Resource Management Diploma, I knew that I definitely wanted to do co-op. I was originally had my heart set on doing an international co-op, but obviously that did not work. Just not the way that the world is panning out. But I'm very happy with the placement that I do have. So yeah, that was always part of the plan for me.
Oh, great. Deanna or Danelle, any thoughts on that at all? Or
Yeah, like I'll speak to that too. So similar to Shannon, I wanted to go back to school as well to kind of further my education, gather skills that I felt were gaps in my resume and gaps in my skill set. So doing this program, it's 5 semesters, and 2 of them are required practicum placements where you actually get the college credit. So going into it, I was aware. And yeah, it was exciting because I got to do 3 terms of academic studies, nerd out a little bit and learn a lot of things, and now be able to do 8 months now. So 3 to 4 month terms of like on-site work placements. So it's cool to be able to learn new things and then be able to apply it in the workplace all within the program.
absolutely, absolutely. So I'm curious as to how you all became, or what your relationship with the arts and culture is, and what led you to pursue opportunities in the arts. So what brought you to the arts, and why are you interested in working in the arts and culture sector? Maybe Deanna, if you'd like to start.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of a funny story. I fell into the arts because during my first co-op placement, I did the thing where I applied everywhere. I was putting out probably 20, 25 applications, and the VSO was the only one that I secured. But once I started working there, absolutely fell in love with it. And I knew after I worked there that that's where I wanted all of my future co-op placements to be. And I find that at least in the arts organizations I've worked in, it's so different than maybe the more corporate world that I currently work in. They're, I think, typically tend to be smaller organizations. It's so fun. It's less serious. There's less bureaucracy. And especially at places like the VSO and the Fringe, the perks are great too. So I got to see all the shows that they put on at the Fringe. I got to attend every concert at the VSO. So both in work and in my personal life, it's just an absolutely enriching experience to be able to work in the arts.
Oh, that's great. That's great. It's so interesting to hear that you had no designs at all of going into the arts, and then ended up doing all of your work terms in organizations like those. And I know, I guess, with Danelle and Shannon and Caitlin, it's been a little bit more deliberate in the sense that it sounds like you have a bit more of a history with the arts, and we're sort of deliberately planning to go into the arts. And so yeah, I'm curious as to what your like personal connections with arts and culture are, and your reasons for going into it as a career choice.
For me, I had been working in communications and marketing, and then eventually in tech for 4 or 5 years. And I found that I was like in a good place financially. I was saving enough money to go on a trip every year, but I realized that the only thing that was interesting me about that lifestyle was going on a trip every year. So I was trying to figure out why that was, and I realized that in traveling, I was learning new things and I was feeling inspired by doing that. And I was also visiting all of these incredible museums and galleries. And I would find myself feeling jealous of the people working there. So I realized that I needed to make a change, and that for me, I didn't think that I was going to be happy long term. Just working for a job that didn't really stir me, in any sort of emotional way. I need to feel inspired by what I do, and so that's when I decided that it was time for me to go back to school and get into working in the arts, because it's somewhere where you can be inspired every day and you can learn something every day.
Hmm. Yeah, there certainly is that personal connection that people feel with the arts, and the desire for working in an industry that they really connect with. Caitlin, do you feel that as well? Do you have a previous? Because I know you had mentioned also that you had completed a BFA previously, so you were. Academically educated specifically in the fine arts. So if you could talk a little bit about that.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, I guess I've always been an artist and oriented towards the arts, and so I did my BFA, and then I actually spent 10 years just doing other stuff, music and traveling and other jobs. And it's only recently, the past few years, where I thought maybe I can merge all my interests into my interests and making a living. And so I can. So I looked into different avenues to do that, and I've always been interested in art conservation. So part of getting experience in an art institution was because I want to eventually go into art conservation, and for that you need to go to a grad school. It's sort of a highly certified trade, and yeah, that's why I was really happy to get into legacy working there, because I just got a lot of experience with like just like how the museum runs and how the collection works, and all the collaborative sort of approaches to art curation, art conservation. Like it just gave me an idea too of just how many different kind of jobs there are in there, depending on your personality, your yeah, just everything. So I hope that everyone can find somewhere in the arts that suits them.
Right, because there is quite a variety for sure.
Yeah, huge variety.
Mm-hmm. Danelle, how did you end up in the arts as something that you were interested in?
I actually originally got a diploma in performing arts. So I did musical theater. So I trained in theater and did music growing up, did my exams and stuff like that. But I found that I was more drawn to like the administrative side of it,
Mm-hmm.
the back end of it, and being in control and organizing things. So I tried to work my way into that after theater school, and then that's after a few years of doing that and traveling and having some jobs, I decided I wanted to fill those gaps that I was talking about earlier and get more education.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I landed here. Yeah.
Great. So I'm curious, just with your positions, what surprised you the most about your work in the arts and culture sector? Like, has there been anything that's really surprised you in your positions that you think is like specific to working in the arts and culture? If any of you have thoughts on that.
I was mostly surprised by, and this might sound silly, but how nice and how willing people are to help you. I think from having been interested in working in the arts and having a hard time kind of entering that world for a few years, I was really intimidated. I thought that, you know, it was a highly gated community and that it would be just too nerve-wracking to talk to anybody about the kind of work that they do. I was terrified of networking and putting myself out there. And I was very pleasantly surprised to discover that in the arts, if you're interested in some aspect of somebody's job, they would probably love to talk to you about it. I've had so many amazing conversations. I've met so many interesting people just by showing genuine interest in what they do. And people, even though everybody is understaffed and everybody is always busy, people love what they do and they want to talk to you about it. So that was a fantastic surprise.
Yeah, that experience rings very true to me as well. That many people who work in the arts are very willing to chat with you about what it is that they do and why they love it and why they enjoy the work. Had there been any other surprises for anybody else in terms of what has surprised them about working in the arts?
Yeah, I mean, just exactly what Shannon said, is just everyone is so supportive and nice and ready to help you and guide you and really explain to you and include you in the work. So yeah, it's just exactly what you said. It's really nice and comforting and encouraging.
How about challenges? Have there, because I mean, as I sort of was stating off the top, it's certainly a challenging time right now for the arts. But I mean, Shannon, you indicated a little bit about how, you know, arts organizations are often, there's this idea that they're understaffed, or there's a lot of people wearing a lot of different hats or having to do a lot of different things. I'm wondering what the most challenging aspect of your WIL positions were, and what you any challenges that you encountered during your times with your different organizations.
I think it probably would be the workload is the most challenging. Yeah, like I said before, there's often, you know, just so much to do and not quite enough people to do it. The positive side of that is that you get to try out so many different kinds of work while you're working, and you get so much experience. But sometimes it is kind of hard to find a good work-life balance. It just takes a little bit of mental training, I think, to figure out what works for you. That's probably been the biggest challenge for me. That and job security, just because it is a competitive field, but everyone is there to support you. Everyone wants you to do well and to love it as much as they do.
I was going to say, yeah, it's sort of notoriously at the whim of government funding, and so things can change a lot. And so almost getting in there is maybe a big challenge. I'm wondering how challenging it would be coming not from an academic background too, because yeah, basically these programs are really great. And I feel like the only people I know that work in the arts they've come through these kind of programs. I don't know if that's your experience with Legacy. It seems like everyone was a co-op or work study, right? At one point. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I we can only hire students or mostly hire students, but yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you.
Deanna or Janelle, have you encountered any challenges in your positions at all?
Yeah, I think Shannon spoke about being understaffed. I think the arts is notoriously underfunded. I think at least one of my CoOp placements was funded by a grant. So, I mean, I'm unfortunately not working in the arts right now. And a big reason for that is, unfortunately, the salary was not comparable. So as much as the arts feeds your soul, it also, you know, needs to feed your wallet, and it's expensive to live. And I think hopefully, I know the government is funding it more, and that there are more grants and that there are more opportunities, hopefully when the pandemic is over. But that was a real challenge for me, was having to give up a higher salary to be able to stay in the arts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the realities of that, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Priorities for sure. Um, I'm that sort of is an interesting segue, I guess, then into one of the questions that I had about, considering working in the arts again. And I mean, is that something, would you ever consider working in the arts again, Deanna? Is that something that you would like to get back into? Or, I mean, I guess sort of depending on the circumstances around that. But it is something
Yeah,
to consider.
that's a great question. I mean, right now, I'm involved in the arts, hopefully through volunteering. That's one way I can still be a part of that community. But my goal is to hopefully advance far enough in my current industry that I make enough money that I can go back to the arts sometime in the future.
Mhm.
But it's, I guess, balancing that sort of, what makes you happy and what, I guess, provides you with a lifestyle that you want at that current moment. And I think the career path that I'm on right now and the time of my life that I'm in right now, it's just not a good fit, but hopefully down the road it can be again.
Mhm.
So just go wait and see.
Mhm. Mhm. And have you taken things from your co-ops that you find yourself using in a totally different, because you're in a university setting now, so in the university setting, things that you are able to apply there that you learned at your co-ops?
Yeah, absolutely. All the skills that I learned in my co-ops are 100% transferable.
Mhm.
I'm starting a new job in communications at the university. And so all of that writing experience that I gained at the Fringe is something that I can bring over to this new role at the university. So even though I didn't stay in the arts, all of the experience that I gained is something that I'm using every day.
Mhm. Oh, great, great. Um, I'm curious to know, for the four of you, because I mean, and just from that story, Deanna, sort of how you ended up now at the university, having been in previous arts co-ops, but has your WIL experiences with Arts Club, with the Legacy Galleries, clarified any big career goals that you feel that you have for yourselves going forward?
It definitely has for me. I understand why art conservation programs require some experience with art collections, because they do want you to get sort of like a hands-on, in-person understanding of how things are run, and just if you enjoy the environment. And it's a hard thing to just hypothesize, I guess. And so I was really happy to have that experience, just because it really kind of gave me like a understanding at least of the environment that I would be in, even though it's just one specific example. But I really enjoyed that environment, and I really just enjoyed being around art all day. I found it very inspiring. So even at its sort of dullest or more like admin kind of moments, I enjoyed it. So it did solidify those kind of goals.
Mm-hmm. Well, great. That's great to hear. Uh, Shannon?
Yeah, I like Caitlin said, I found it really affirming. I took a pretty big gamble with my decision to switch careers and to go back to school full time. And so it's been really, really good to have this co-op. And it's very clear to me from doing this work that this is something that I want to be doing long term.
Mhm.
I think that if you have an arts placement co-op, even if it's not an organization that you want to continue working with, you'll be able to tell if that's the kind of environment and the kind of projects that you're interested in working on. And I think someone else had mentioned earlier, one of the really cool parts about doing a co-op term is that you get an inside look at an organization and you get a better understanding of what kind of roles exist there. Because I think, 2 years ago, I could have named like 2 positions at a museum. One would be curator and one would be conservator. And I didn't know what anybody else did. And I knew that it was something that I was interested in doing, but I didn't know where I might fit in. And now I have a way more clear idea of what I want to get out of this in the long term, which is really cool. So yeah, it's been very affirming for me.
Oh, cool. And so I'm curious, where do you see, what's the role that you see for yourself? What is it?
Yeah. So I know that I really like working with artists. I would love to be an artist myself, but I just don't have that level of talent. So I really, really like working with artists and kind of being a link between the artist and the public. So, if I were to give myself a 5-year plan, it would probably be working on a curatorial team in an engagement role, or working for the city for their public engagement or public arts departments, because I'm also really, really interested in how, citizens interact with art and engage with art.
Great. Danelle, has it clarified anything for you about any of your career goals going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I have never worked in an arts organization where there's like so much structure and like proper departments and how everything runs really smoothly and works together. So that really clarified like, oh yeah, this is a cool industry and it can be run well. And so yeah, seeing where I could fit in, which departments interest me the most, how it all works on the back end was cool to see. So I'm excited to keep learning more and see where I fit best.
Great. I have a question for you. This is sort of going in a little bit of a different direction now. The COVID-19 question, and it's sort of been touched on a little bit. Shannon, you talked a little bit about how working digitally and how a lot of that work or sort of online, and how things are sort of transitioning back into in-person. And I'm wondering how COVID impacted any of your any of your will placements, and how it impacted or how it has impacted your work placements, and just how you've seen it impact the world of your workplaces in the arts in general.
I started my diploma program like 2 months before the pandemic began. So my entire arts experience has been in the midst of the pandemic. When I started working with Legacy, originally it was as a work study student, like what Caitlin's done. And we were back to having the gallery open by the time I started there. It was closed for a few months at the beginning of the pandemic, but yeah, we had much more, much fewer people coming into the gallery. It was really, really slow last year. A cool side of that is that you get to have really personal conversations with everyone who's coming in. And a lot of the time people were feeling pretty disconnected, and they were kind of looking to make a sort of connection. So I had a lot of really interesting conversations with visitors last year. We being Legacy kind of did our first ever online programs during COVID, and that has turned out to be quite successful for us. It's not always a great fit for a program, but in some cases it's been more successful online than it would have been in person. We just had an artist talk with 3 Indigenous tattoo artists who are all located in different places: Seattle, Terrace, and Halifax. And I mean, the gallery, of course, saved some money by not having to fly everyone out there, but we also had a way bigger turnout for an online event with people from all across the country than we would have in person. It was fantastic. We had 91 people show up and such an engaged audience. It was a great event. And as much as I would have loved to have had the artists in the gallery, I think that it was better suited to being online. So that's been really cool. A downside is now that we're starting to bring more people into the gallery, we'll have a class tour come in. And part of my role is to lead the tours, which is something I love doing. Before we were doing really small tours with 10 people, and now we're having tours of 30 students or so. And I'm not generally that nervous public speaking, but it's very nerve-wracking speaking to 30 people when you can't see their expression at all. So that's been a little distracting. The last few tours I've felt very kind of awkward. So that's something to get used to, but I'm really happy to have more people in the gallery now. Just need to get used to only seeing their eyes when I'm speaking to them and not expecting a reaction.
Great. Danelle, how about for you? Because I mean, theater, I mean, that's one of those things that is sort of dependent on people in the building a lot of the time. And so I imagine it's sort of changed the way things have been done at Arts Club as well.
Yeah, I mean, just digital programs were set up, just more trying to acquire more private and public revenue versus like income, ticket sales and stuff like that.
Right.
But it stayed afloat. People are still here. Then it was at 50% capacity, so they managed to make it work during that. And now we just got up to 100%. So
that's right.
Sales are a lot more busy. So yeah, so it's exciting to have the theater full again. Back to 100% capacity. I can't believe it. It's going to be very interesting.
Yeah,
close to people.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be nice to have people back in the building and to sort of reconceive of theater again as how it was prior to the pandemic. I'm wondering what your advice, the five of you, or the four of you, I'm looking at myself as well and counting me in that in that five. What your advice would be for students considering WIL placements in like with an arts and culture organization, if you have any words of advice or things that you wish you knew prior to your placements that you would like to impart for students who are interested. Maybe Caitlin, we'll start with you this time.
Yeah, I like what Shannon said. I think about everyone just being really nice. Like, I think you really kind of get out what you put into it. And if you just go there and talk to everyone and sort of talking to everyone about your goals was actually really helpful for me because, or not everyone, but, you know, talking to the people who are around you about your goals. And yeah, I ended up I'm just kind of shy, I guess, and I just didn't talk a lot about what I was really doing. But then eventually I was talking to the curator of collections about my sort of end goal of trying to be an art conservator. And she said, oh, I'll put you in touch with this person. And she ended up being a reference for my grad school application. And yeah, I guess just put yourself out there and don't be afraid or intimidated by arts organizations.
Talk to everybody.
Yeah. Talk to everyone.
Yeah. Deanna, do you have any thoughts at all on what sort of advice you would give for someone wanting to pursue a placement in this sector?
Yeah, maybe building on what Caitlin was saying, that mentorship is such a huge opportunity to take advantage of if your school provides any kind of mentorship programs. At UBC, the Arts Co-op Student Association did a mentorship program, and that's a really great way to be able to connect to people within the industry, but they're all people that were exactly where you were. So they're all super understanding, they know exactly how you're feeling, and they can connect you to people within organizations that you're interested in learning more about. and it's free. And usually for students, it's really widely available. So that was something I took advantage of, and I don't regret it.
Great. Danelle, anything you wanted to add? Any words of advice for the aspiring co-op student or WIL student or somebody who's interested in getting into the arts at all?
Yeah, I mean, just know what you want to learn and ask for it. Like if you're like, oh, I'm really interested in events, like talk to the person who's head of events or talk to your supervisor and just be like, I want to learn more about this. Can I shadow them one day? Or yeah, anything. If you want to learn about something, don't be afraid to just ask if you can, because generally they're like, yeah, let's pick one day next week and you can help with this project or help with planning this. So yeah.
Great. I'm just keeping an eye on the time. I know I said I would open things up to the group if there are questions, and I see that we have one in the chat. And Debbie is wondering, for those of you who have previously or currently do not work in the arts, what would you say are the main differences between those experiences? Yeah, so I guess, yeah, can you point to any differences between your work in the arts and your work in other areas?
When I was working in communications and certainly when I was working in tech, when I finished work, I didn't think about it again until I got there the next day. That's not the case at all. With arts, I mean, maybe it is for some people. It's not been the case for me. It doesn't seem to be the case for my coworkers either. But I mean that in a good way. Like we find ourselves thinking about the projects that we're working on because we want to keep thinking about them. And sometimes that will kind of lead you down a path of doing more work than you were supposed to be doing. But it does keep your brain really engaged. So yeah, I find myself thinking about projects long term. I find myself setting ideas for new projects all the time, whereas I don't think that I would have gone out of my way to make more work for myself in previous jobs. But yeah, it's just something that I'm interested in learning more about. So I'm looking for those opportunities and spending time thinking about them.
Did anybody else have anything that they wanted to add to that? If they've noticed any big differences between the different industries that they've had a chance to work in?
I think I can speak to that a little bit. I think it really depends on maybe not between arts and working outside the arts, but about the size of the organization. I think the larger the organization is, the more structure there will be, but also the more politics and red tape you'll encounter. I don't know if it's because arts is typically smaller or maybe it's a more creative field. You have more freedom and creative liberty. But one of the challenges I experienced working outside the arts is the pace can get really slow because the review and approval process is much longer than I would experience in the arts, and the bureaucracy of a larger structured unionized workplace always also factors in.
Great, thank you. If anybody else has any other questions, feel free to add them to the chat or just unmute yourself if you'd like as well. If anybody has burning questions for our panel today.
I just wanted to quickly say hi to Allison and Joy. I just noticed you two in the feed there, and yeah, you've both been so helpful with my co-op work term. So thank you. It's great to see you too.
Yeah.
Great to see you too, Shannon.
Well, that's great. Thanks everybody for joining. I think that we can leave it here then. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time and with your stories, Danelle, Caitlin, Shannon, and Deanna. I also wanted to just give a shout out to Shirley Yu, who is our talent match co-op student who was helping out with some of the tech today and operating our slides earlier on in the session. So Shirley, thank you. I appreciate it. And as I had said earlier, if you have any questions or you want to be in touch, you can find information about Talent Match at our website. And that is at, sorry, I'm just getting, I should have that information. I'll put it into the chat. ACE-WIL.ca/talent match for students. And I'll put that in the chat right now. And I appreciate everyone coming. Have a great day, and we'll see you and keep in touch. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.